Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
And Harvey, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thank you. Welcome to being the center of the universe.
Yeah, I call it Center of the Universe because that's the slogan for the town I grew up in, and it's where I live now. And you and I are in each other's Center of the Universe right now. And so appreciate you doing this. Appreciate Jock connecting me to you. Jock's a great dude. He told me a lot of great things about you. So
it means a lot that one, like you say, Jock is a great person, and for him to think of me and think that I would be a good person, I really respect him and appreciate it. So glad to be here. It's taken a minute for us to get together, so I appreciate you staying on top of it.
Well, I've learned a lot about you the last couple of months, and I read your book, Stepping Stones. I enjoyed it. I read it very quickly because it was a page turner. Your life, especially between early age and being drafted in the '88 draft, was not my experiences at all. You went through some rough stuff. How would you describe growing up in Texas?
So, it's always kind of amazing to me, like when people say it was rough. It wasn't rough. It was the journey. I mean, everybody has a story, right? And my story, although it wasn't the classic way of making it to the pros, it was a way. And sometimes you have to learn some lessons early on. But I'm glad it happened early on. And as you've read the book, one wrong turn in any direction could have been, your whole life could have been over with. When I was stealing meat at the restaurant that I was working with, and the owner came in, that could have turned into me going to jail for years. One wrong turn could have went 1,000 different directions, and by the grace of God, it all worked out. So here we are.
Yeah, I was surprised to read that you basically quit high school, right?
Yeah,
pretty close to graduation. What was going through your head at the time?
Well, so I had gotten to a point in high school, and I think it's maybe some kids you don't know how to express yourself, and you're doing it, but you're kind of going through the motions because you know you're supposed to go through high school, but you don't necessarily know what you want to do, where you want to go, and you don't feel like you're in place, and so I got to a point where I was a good athlete. Coaches wanted me to play football, but then my grades weren't good because I was missing a lot of days of school. So I was just skipping school and not really doing anything but sitting at home watching TV. And so you get to a point where you either get straight F's, you drop out of school, at least in my mind, drop out of school, get my mind right, and then go back, or you take easy classes just so that you can get by. And I knew I wasn't dumb, so I didn't want to take easy classes just to get by. Straight F's, it would be just going through the motion and trying to, just survive. Or to me, in my world at that time, was to drop out, get my mind right, and then focus on going back. And so that's kind of what I did, was to drop out. Not necessarily the best situation, but for me, that was a kind of a springboard or a stepping stone to, leading to everything else.
Yeah, and you went back to high school pretty quickly. Right? Yeah, you weren't out that long.
My intent was like I wanted to get out of school, get my mind right, and then go back. But I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to say I went back as opposed to being forced back or being forced to do something. So I went back pretty much right away. But during that time of dropping out, you get to see what people thought of you. And as much as there was some negative, there was a lot of encouragement too. There were a lot of people along the way that said, "Hey, man, you're too big to be dropping out or throwing your life away. Man, you're too smart to do this and that." So there's a lot of encouragement, and then there was some people looking at me, and without saying a word, it was like, "Oh, well, you're another idiot, or you're stupid, or you're dumb." And so my goal was to get back and kind of prove to everybody that I wasn't dumb. I just didn't really have a purpose or a focus on where I wanted to go.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of football players that have played at the highest level. You're actually my first guy that got drafted in the first 12 picks. I will say that.
Thumbs up, yep.
But a lot of guys grow up and their passion gets them to the highest levels of football. Some guys like the game but don't really love it, but are clearly physically talented for it, and they need someone outside of their own mind to motivate them. Did you find yourself in that place as a younger person where you needed others to motivate you, or did
You
you
know,
just?
that was actually really observant of you to mention that because yeah, I was I won't say a people pleaser, but I fed off the energy of people and trying to do good for people and with people. And so that was motivation. You know, good job, Ken. I mean, you can do this. That would encourage me. That would keep me going. Dropping out forced me to have to kind of rely on myself, or at least not so much myself, to rely on God. But you know, that's an invisible God. So you relying on me. What I felt was God saying that you had a purpose and a destiny for your life, and it's like getting I don't know, a lifeline, a life vest that someone threw to you, and they're pulling you back to shore because now all of a sudden, where you were out there where you felt like it was by yourself, now you have a direction and a purpose, and you start realizing that you wanna survive and you want to keep going on, and so now you have more of a focus, and I think that's what I needed was focus and a reason to do, and then having the skill set or at least the direction of how do you go about doing that. And that was kind of how I tried to map out, you know, not necessarily playing in the pros, but how I was going to try to get to college, which, you know, I guess is thank God for being dumb in some ways because I was too stupid to realize, you know, that was the chances of doing that were, you know, pretty wide. But sometimes that's what faith is you go off of things that you believe is impossible and you try it anyhow and you find out.
Yeah, it's really about going from where you are to the next stepping stone, and sometimes you can plan it, and sometimes it just happens.
Right.
But the path is yours, and the path is valuable because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people in the world, and if you know, as I wrote the book, it was the hardest thing was to write it. Right, I felt like I was supposed to write it, and I would start with a chapter, and then I was like, now how can I write this? And I didn't want to mention people's names to throw people under the bus because one perspective is maybe different than another perspective, and so I kept the names out of it for the most part. But how do you write this and make it interesting? And you know, I've never written a book. I've always written either children's books or thriller suspense novels where it's all kind of in my mind. But to write about my life, you have to go back and face things. But then once you face it and you see it, you get it out there, and hopefully that book can then teach people that it's possible. Now there are methods and things that you have to do, but a lot of things are possible. And the more I talk to successful people or people who've had journeys, it's the foundation of what everyone's done is similar. It's just they had to go about it in different ways, and so that's kind of excuse me, that's kind of what I've learned is that you know one you can't you know rarely it happens where it's going to be just by luck. Usually there's a lot of hard work involved that people don't see. It's a dream or a passion for something that you're focusing on. It's creating habits and systems that you can follow. It's taking chances and being a risk taker. Most successful people, a lot of successful people, are risk takers. Now, that's not saying that you can't get and be successful in other ways. There are people who work jobs and they're good at their skill set, but you know, I think it's you have to have some of those components, right? You gotta bust your butt in the classroom so that when you get this high paying job, you know, you're doing it every day, but it's because you busted your butt in the classroom way back when, and you developed some habits of studying and all that. So, you know, there are some things that are just fundamentally truths, and you have to learn to live with those.
Yeah, I think when I said rough childhood, and technically this wasn't your childhood, but when you went out to California to play for a junior college team, you
Yeah.
you, you weren't sure where you were getting food from for a good part of that time, right?
Yeah, and you know, they used to be, you know, every college person like, you know, we starved and we lived off of, you know, Roman noodles, and you know, we've done all this stuff, and so you don't know where you're getting your food from, but that was part of the journey, and fortunately, there were good people around me. Even in my book, I talked about my roommate, and we came around after the first year, and learned to share with each other. And my wife was my girlfriend then was a big part of helping me survive. And then sometimes you gotta struggle, and that's part of life. You know, it's those missed meals that make you appreciate the meals that you have, and that was kind of part of me. Hopefully, you know, if anyone said, "Oh man, you're humble" and all that stuff, it's just because you know, look, I appreciate the things that I've gotten and where I've gotten to because of some of the things I had to go through. And I think that's if you put it in a self-help book, sometimes when you go through the build character, and hopefully that built some character in me.
I imagine the process of writing the book about your early life was therapeutic for you, was it?
It was. So when you write about yourself, and I would suggest. I mean, it's not, you don't have to write a novel or anything, but for everyone, if you're just trying to go back and you're trying to deal with some things, write it out like you're writing a story. And maybe you're the only one that sees it, and you just realize it doesn't even have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in order. But when you start writing it, you start kind of coaching yourself. You start seeing things that you may not have never seen before. You start realizing the things that you thought were so hard may have been really simple, but while you were in it, it seemed like it was the worst thing and the hardest thing in the world to do. And then you get past it and you say, wow, I got past it. And it may be something that could teach you things in the future. And so in writing a book, it was therapeutic because I had to face some demons, face some things about myself, and realize some things that I had achieved, but also some things that I still need to work on. And that was kind of a eye opener that sometimes if you don't learn whatever lesson you're trying to be taught, you'll have to do it over again. It comes out in a different way, different format, but it's the same foundational thing, right? And if you're uh, angry all the time, you may get a nice job, you may get all this, the wealth, all that stuff, but then you haven't dealt with that anger. You may end up in divorce. You may end up not talking to your kids. You may end up getting, a lot of things because you haven't dealt with that core issue. And that's what the book, Long Answer to a Short Question, that's the therapeutic part of the book that helped me.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like to be an NFL player. I don't even know what it's like to even realize it's a possibility. At what point did you think it was going to be a possibility that you could have a long career in the NFL?
Well, a long career in the NFL. When when my senior year in college, and we started playing some of the postseason games. Our first game was actually we played in Japan. It was called the Coca-Cola Bowl, and then I was most valuable defensive player there. Then I went to the East-West Shrine game, and I was most valuable defensive player there. Then the Senior Bowl, and I was most valuable defensive player there. So I was like, hey, I may have something. And then go to the combines, and I have a great combine, and so people are starting to talk, and they're starting to say, oh, this guy may be, some. And so I get drafted, and it's way unexpected. I hadn't even talked to the Cardinals when they drafted me. I didn't even know they were interested in me. And so they called me up and said, hey, we want to draft you. You get drafted, and then you're playing, and I'm not thinking about longevity. I'm just thinking about, the day I got drafted, my goal was like, in my mind, I want to show them that they got a bargain getting me at number 12. That was my mindset. I want to let them know that they were geniuses by getting me. And so I got drafted, and my career it almost took a nosedive. I don't want to say because of me or because of them, but sometimes guys get to the pros, and it's not that they're not a good athlete or it could be a superstar, but maybe the coaches have them in the wrong position, or the team overdrafted in a certain spot, or the people that you're playing with is not as good, so it makes you look bad. They had me, and they wanted me to be a third down cover guy, and I couldn't cover. Yeah, I couldn't catch. I couldn't cover anybody. I wasn't a cover guy, and I was a pass rusher. But they were like, "You too small to be a pass rusher," and so I fortunately was able to demonstrate and prove to them every day in practice, go against their best guy, beat them, and not only beat them, embarrass them, and so that they had to finally say, you know what, maybe this guy's a pass rusher, and that kind of gave me some longevity in my career of being a pass rusher.
Yeah, your sack stats are ridiculous. I mean, you averaged almost 9 sacks a season, which is a ton of sacks
Yeah.
over a long period of time. You only had one interception, which I think meant you were being used properly as a pass rusher most of the time.
Well, no, there were times where I had to drop a whole lot. Like first and second downs, I was always a linebacker, and I was always in the coverage. I just couldn't catch. I couldn't. They used to say I was either Roberto Duran, hands of stone, or I would say, I couldn't catch a cold butt naked in Alaska. I mean, I wasn't a catch guy, but my second career interception was in the Pro Bowl, and I ran it back for a touchdown. So
Nice.
yeah, if you got to get 8 interception, that's a good one to get one in.
No, absolutely. What do you enjoy about football when you
You,
play?
you know what? It's the challenge of knowing the person in front of you is trying to stop you from achieving your goal, right? And so you know they're going to try everything that they can to stop you, and you got to keep pressing. You got to keep going, and then when you achieve your goal, which for me is good, getting a sack. When you achieve your goal, then it's like the greatest feeling in the world. And the best thing is to have that person yelling, look out to his quarterback, dragging on the bottom of your leg because you just manhandled and you got through it. And so, even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking like, that's a life lesson, right? Sometimes the greatest gift is getting to the end goal, but you're gonna have to go through that challenge. That big offensive lineman, that running back that's gonna try to stop you. Sometimes I got triple team. But when you keep pressing and you keep pushing, then sometimes you make that goal and it's like, man, it is the greatest feeling in the world. And so I wish everybody could experience that type of feeling once in their life.
There are very few people on earth that are equipped to go up against a right or left tackle that they're so big. I don't understand how humans are as big as they are, and I can't
Some big
understand
big
how
boys.
people get through them to get to the quarterback.
Well, you know what? I was fast at the time. Now a lot of people are fast, but I ran like a 4.5, 4.5, 4.6 40. But I was bench pressing about 500 pounds, and so whereas I would shock them with the speed, and then when they would adjust to the speed, I would blow their mind with the strength. And so yeah, I was kind of a little combination of that at the time. And so it's these big linemen to be as big as they are and to be as agile as they are, for me, it was easy, right? I could play 80 plays, and if I got 2 sacks in 80 plays, I'm the hero of the game, right? I'm the star. For them, they're playing 78 plays great, and then they mess up on two, and then everyone's looking at them like you're horrible. So I always had the advantage, and to me, that was cool. They're the ones that really I respect a whole lot because I know what I was trying to do, and they had to stop me.
Yeah, that's a pretty thankless job playing offensive line at any
No
level.
doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. It is. I mean, I look at it and I said, it's like teachers, as we found out, with COVID. It's a pretty thankless job. It's like nurses. You got those thankless jobs, but when one mess up or one thing that's not there or something happens, and all of a sudden you realize how much and how important they really are to you. So, I've always respected offensive linemen and in the general population, I try to respect. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I try to respect other people who are in jobs where no one gets the glory, but they do their job and they do it well. And some of those people have, affected and changed my life as well just by being a good person.
Yeah, so I have to ask, and I don't think you may have mentioned this in the book. Did you want to get drafted by the Cowboys or somebody that you rooted for growing up?
Yep, yep. So I'm from Austin, Texas. And so, the whole family's Texas, right? We didn't eat dinner sometimes if the Cowboys lost. Parents are pissed off and no one wants to cook and all that stuff. So, you want to be a Cowboy. I wanted to be a Cowboy player. Growing up, I watched Tootel Jones, Harvey Martin, Robert Newhouse, Tony Dorsett. You're watching all these guys. And I got a chance to meet Tootel Jones. Probably, I met him a couple years ago, but I met him again a couple of months ago. And I'm still like a kid in a candy store. I'm like standing up next to him. I'm like, hey, can I get the other guy? Nervous to talk to him. Excuse me, Mr. Tutal, can I bother you for a second? But it also kind of gives you a perspective of when people come up to you. Not that I'm all that, but if I see someone that's nervous or whatever, I try to make them feel as comfortable as possible because I know on my side, I've been like a kid in a candy store when I've got a chance to meet some of the people that I've always wanted to meet. So it's kind of cool.
You and I are both in our 50s, and so I remember Ed Too Tall Jones. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I grew up in Redskins territory. We'll talk about
Yeah.
the Commanders here in a second. But Ed Too Tall Jones and Randy White were my two favorite Cowboys. Those two guys could wreck a game more than any two combined that I'd ever seen to that point.
Well, I got a picture of me, and by God, he is a big man. I mean, I'm standing next to him. I could imagine getting slapped upside the head by him. I mean, I think I'm looking at him like, my God, this is a big gentleman. So there's some big jokers out there, and they know how to play the game, and they enjoy the game, and it's regardless of the team, you respect the game. You respect players of the game. Now you want to have your rivalries and you want to have all that, but there's some guys who you just respect because they play the game extremely hard, extremely well, and do a good job.
Right on. What's your fondest memory or best relationship from your time in Phoenix?
So one of my one of my best friends, a guy named Anthony Bell. He was a linebacker as well. My rookie year, they told us to sing songs. I'm like, I'm not singing. I can't sing. And like, you better get up there, Rook, and sing. So I started singing a song. He told me, shut up. You're not even singing my song right. And I'm like, well, you come make me sing my song, right? And he started walking. And this joker, I'm 6'2", 235 pounds. I'm benching around, 495. He walks up, he's 6'3", around 255. He's benching 550 pounds. Fists look like meat hooks. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, oh my God, I guess I gotta do the deed. We gotta fight. And someone broke us up, and I was shaking so bad. I was like, oh thank God. But then we ended up becoming great friends, and so that was like it was cool. And as a matter of fact, even to the point, because he's such a good guy, even to the point of kind of saving my career. He showed me how to go against a tight end. I never really went against tight ends a whole lot. And so he showed me how to position my feet, how to take on the tight end, and that pretty much saved my career as being more than just a pass rusher, is to be a linebacker as well. And so if that's kind of a memory, that is one of my fondest memories. It's just that he's a good guy there. Yeah.
It sounds like he taught you some pretty important stuff that may have changed your trajectory in the NFL too.
Yeah, there's some guys that I'm amazed, like it's so selfless that they're not selfish in any way. They just want the team to win, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help the team win. And you see some of those guys in like every business, every group gathering. You need people like that don't care about the glory, don't care about whatever. They just want the team to win, and are willing to the point of, I was basically going to end up taking his job, willing to the point of me taking his job in order for us to get to where we needed to go as a team. And that's, man, hats off to that.
In your experience, out of a 53-man roster, how many guys are like that?
You know what? On a good team, like there's, yeah, probably most of the starters are like that. I mean, you may have 11 guys on defense, and 10 of them would be guys who would do everything because it is about a team. Every once in a while, you'll get one person who's pretty much all about themselves and all about what can I get out the game. But for a lot guys, it's about the team, and that's probably the great thing about football. It becomes a team. It becomes that you got to trust the person next to you. That if you do your job and he does his job, you're both good enough athletes to make the things happen. And you know what he's going to do without even thinking about it. And he knows what you're going to do without thinking about it. And if you mess up, you each try to cover each other's butt. That's teamwork. That becomes the whole group where you're all looking out for each other. And you see the great teams become that way. We'll talk about the Commanders later, but the Commanders defense, you see them all. No one now is it's all about me. It's all about we're going to all keep trying to get great together, and we're going to be happy for each other. If one person gets a sack, we're all cheering for them, or one person gets an interception. We're all part of this great team trying to win a game, and that's kind of the NFL. I think it's TV may show, and you'll hear about guys who are kind of selfish and all about them, but it's not as many as it looks like it's on TV. It's 53 guys. You may have two or three that's like that. I doubt even that much, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, those me guys tend to have the cameras follow them.
It is, and that's the hard thing is because the cameras follow them. So then either one, the younger generation sees and say that's the way I need to be, or guys start saying, "Dang, I'm busting my butt. No cameras follow me." So you start becoming that way a little bit because everybody wants some attention and everybody wants to be kind of a star, but it is what it is. You go out and you play your game, and if you play it well enough, then hopefully people take notice. And oftentimes it happens. Sometimes it don't. Like London Fletcher, who's the who played with the Commanders. I think he's eligible for the Hall of Fame now. But sometimes you don't get as much publicity as you should be. Brian Mitchell, who should be in the Hall of Fame, not going to get as much publicity as he should be. Now he talked a big game, so but he backed it up. But there's some guys who don't talk. Art Monk, it took him a long time to get into the Hall of Fame, but had steady records, balling, and never really got a chance until later that he should have been in. And his first opportunity to be in the Hall of Fame, he should have been there, and he wasn't. And he wasn't a talker. He didn't talk a lot of lip. He didn't showboat. He didn't do a dance. He just went out and performed every day.
And if he had done some showboating, he maybe gets into the Hall of Fame a little bit earlier, but he did it the right way. I love Art Monk's story. I love the way he played. And I love the way he carried himself.
Yeah, he was one of those guys. When I came to the team, I know he's on his way out, but my wife and I became friends with Charles Mann, Art Monk, Monty Coleman, Darryl Green, and they kind of show the example of how you're supposed to be. How do you handle yourself as a player? There was a attitude and the way that they handled themselves. And you say, you know what? Okay, that's the way I'm supposed to be. And Tim Johnson is another guy. That's the way I'm supposed to handle myself. These are Super Bowl players who've been to the highest level, and man, they handle themselves like true leaders. And so, yeah, that was a perfect example for me. Coming to this from Arizona, where you didn't have as much media airtime, to come into DC, where it was, this was the Washington Redskins, and they were just coming off of a couple of Super Bowls, and everybody was filling the stands, and the stadium still rocking and all that stuff. So it taught me a lot.
Yeah. So speaking of the Redskins, now Commanders, when I was looking at your career stats, I noticed that your first 4 years in Washington, after 6 years in Phoenix, you went to the Pro Bowl.
That I did. So
what changed?
Nothing changed. I mean, I played just as hard, if not harder, in Arizona. I think what changed is I got more TV time, and people start, once they got recognition. Like in Arizona, when we first went there, it was a blackout rule. If the stadium wasn't full, then the game was never televised. So our games were never televised. The owner charged, I think, the second highest ticket prices, and the team wasn't winning, so we didn't have a full stadium. There was not a lot of TV time for people to recognize us or me as a player. And so, if you don't get TV time, and this is back when we didn't have all the TV sports channels, you didn't get as much publicity. And if you didn't get as much publicity, people didn't know about you. And unless you just dominated with stats, it wouldn't happen. But once you start dominating, my first year with the Redskins, I had 13 and a half sacks that year. And so that gave me the boost. People said, whoa, who is this guy? And then, from there, it was like, oh, he's still doing this thing. He's still doing this thing. So, yeah.
If you're not on TV, you're just a stat line in the paper that
right.
back played, right?
And no one can tell. No one can tell that maybe you got 3 guys on you and you still managed to get 2 sacks in a game. No one can see that, or that you're the best player on the defense, and so everyone's running away from you, and you're spending most of your games chasing stuff. No one can see those type of things with just a number, and that's the disadvantage that some people have.
I imagine you enjoyed your time in Washington more than you enjoyed your time in Phoenix, or am I wrong there?
No, it was both. I mean, look, Phoenix was like, this was my chance. This was my first start. And there's a lot of great people there. I mean, diehard, the amount of fans that we had, there wasn't a huge number. Diehard, there's a guy there who would get every card that was ever made about me, take the time to put them all in the book. And every year, even while I was in Washington, he would send me the cards. This is the first edition. This is blah, blah, blah. And these are like hard cards. And he would, just diehard fans. So it was a good time in both areas. Here I got more publicity, but I would never slight Phoenix because, I think I played just as hard and did some pretty incredible plays in Arizona. But once again, just never got the TV time, so people didn't get a chance to see it.
All right, I'm going to switch topics here awkwardly because I don't know how to transition from playing football to writing children's books. But how did you get into that?
Here's your transition. So when you got hit in the head and you were knocked out on the football field, did you think about writing children's books? No, so my first children's book. This story. I don't know if my boys like it or not, but both of them in school. One of them came home and he's asking all these questions about a character, or at least his opportunity to be a character on a cartoon. But then at the end, he was like, but there, he was worried that he was never going to be on in the cartoon because he said there were no brown characters. And I was like, wow, it didn't hit me until then. It's like 25 years ago, but I'm like, you know, there you're right. And if you don't see it, it's not something that I don't know if it was intentional or not, but for him, through the eyes of my son, that's what he saw. And I was like, you know what? I want him and his brother to see themselves as a character in a book, in a kid's book. And I wanted it to be a simple kid's book. So the book is like hide and seek, but I wanted them to know that they were a character. So every time they picked up their book, they could say, that's me. But any other kid could read it and they get whatever they want. But my boys would know that that's them. And so I did that book, like I said, I think it was like 24, 25 years ago. And then fortunately, um, Terry Crews, who's the actor, was a great artist, and he did a phenomenal job with the artwork. And then 20 some years later, we actually republished the book and used augmented reality with the book as well. So that's kind of been that was my taste of writing. And you write to your level, right? He ran fast, boom, he jumped high, you know. But it was a taste of it. But then also I got a chance to see when we passed out those books. Washington Post at the time, they printed up a bunch of them. We gave them to kids in the inner city, and you got a chance to see how they looked at it and said, "Man, that's me. That's," and you realize you were planting some good seeds. So from that, I started writing children's books, and just trying to, my imagination is kid like anyhow. So I'm kind of like, hopefully what I write can maybe plant a good seed and make a difference to somebody. Who knows? I don't know. My thriller suspense novels, that's just stuff that's been. That's just to remind people I did play linebacker. so, but it's kind of the test to see. To me, it's amazing to take a blank sheet of paper and to create a world or to create a story from a blank sheet of paper, and where a lot of people say, "Man, I wish I could have." I mean, I think to me, maybe it was a gift, but it, it, it's just kind of a fun, cool thing to do.
Yeah, your origin story for writing children's books is the best story I've heard in a long time, man. I love that. You should have won Dad of the Year the year you wrote that book.
Well, you know what? It's just my goal. My goal had been to write a book for them when they were 6 and 8, and then when they were 14 and 12, which I did. It was another book I wrote called Brothers of the Storm, and then I wanted to write a book for them as adults, like so that they would have a trilogy, 3 books as they kind of went through their life. I got the 2 done. I don't know about the other one as an adult, but it's not. I think most dads would do it. Sometimes it's just I was able to because of football to do it and to get some notoriety and get some help. But most dads would do it, and we do it. You do it. We tuck your kids in bed at night and you make up a story. You're doing pretty much the same thing. I just happen to put it on a piece of paper, but just don't say you can't because kids will remember more than anything. They'll remember the time that you spent with them as opposed to the story. The story is kind of association, but they'll remember that hug, that us going to bed at night and Dad coming in the room and reading the story. That's what they remember, and that to me is more precious than anything.
You mentioned Terry Crews. How did you and Terry become friends?
So once again, now that you mention it, I guess all my friends would be people that I was going to fight because Terry was a linebacker behind me. We're playing ball, and linebackers you end up sharing or being in the same room with each other, and you end up on road trips together and all that stuff. We're in practice one time. He hit me so hard because Terry was like, "I gotta go." He was hungry. He wanted to go, and he was a good player. And he hit me so hard, my helmet went in my neck. It took a chunk of meat out of my neck.
Ah,
And so I'm sitting up there bleeding. He's thinking he's gonna lose his job. I'm like, we're cool, but it was kind of like, okay, we're friends, dude. We got to be friends, or we're gonna kill each other. I'm gonna kill you, or you gonna kill me. I say kill. This is
yeah,
too
yeah, yeah.
deep. We're gonna hurt each other. We're gonna hit each other. But it was that kind of attitude, and it's like, you know what? And he was a funny guy, so it's like, we're friends. And then he's super creative, and so that was the other side of me that we had in common that kind of put that friendship together. So yeah, we're friends.
Yeah, well, you also have the reputation, and I think it's well founded, that you're both very nice people and very considerate people.
I think we both realize that it's what we've achieved and where we're at is that it's a gift, that we're no better than anybody else, and that we played a game or his acting or whatever, that it's a gift, but we put on our pants like everybody else. You try to treat people with respect, and if anything, that's a example of my parents teaching me, and so hopefully, I'm a good representation of my parents, and then hopefully my kids are a good representation of me and my wife, and hopefully that's the case. We'll see. And not every time. Look, there's some people that you would go to and they'd be like, "Well, Ken ain't the nicest person. I've had this or that." And there are moments that you have in your life. I'm not coming across in my sanctum, but I try to treat people with respect, and hopefully it comes across that way.
All right, another weird transition. Tell me about float ball.
Oh, good one. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a long, short story. Long time ago, a friend of mine, me and another guy who's an aerospace engineer, we did a zero gravity flight. It's you go on a plane, plane's hollowed out. It's matted at the floor of it. The plane kind of goes up and then it drops. And for the second 15 seconds it drops, the plane is dropping faster than your body, so you float. You get to experience what it's like to be weightless. And so we did this, and it was a cool adventure. Then we were like, this would be cool, but what happens when people go to space, or if you want to bring people back? Let's create a game. So I came up with this idea of a game called float ball, and it's kind of based off of numbers and lights and colors and all that stuff. And so it's kind of set on the shelf. Years later, in the last couple of years, last year actually, I'm like, you know what, it's sitting here and I need to do something with it. So I kind of came up with an Earth version of that game. And so I'm rolling it out actually. So you're the first person to know. I'm gonna try to roll it out next year. I got the rules, I got the game, I got how it's gonna be set up. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm gonna try to do a celebrity first game to see it roll out, and it kind of goes back to that dream of anything's possible. Um, you know, if I can't, I'm maybe I'm not going to be a sports commentator. Maybe I'm not this and that. But what's to say I can't create my own league, my own game? If it fails, okay, but at least I tried. And so, for a while I stopped dreaming, and I had to kind of revigorate myself to say, you know what, it's okay to dream the impossible. It's okay to dream that you can start your own league with a game that was derived from space called float ball. Hey, why not try it? And if it works, then it's great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. You know, how many people are sitting now and on their deathbed saying, "I wish I would have." So I'm gonna
Yeah,
try.
look, the odds of you going from Austin, Texas, as a young kid playing in the NFL for 11 seasons, it's a lot longer odds doing that than there are making float ball big.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's probably what the thing that keeps driving me is that the odds are it can't happen. Will lightning strike twice? Who knows? But if it does, then I no longer have to be Ken Harvey, the Washington Redskin player. It's a nice piece of me, but I'm Ken Harvey, the commissioner of the Flow Ball League. I am the man. So there you go.
I like that. All right, I know you've got to go here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So one of the standard questions we ask most of our guests towards the end is: imagine you're a talk show host. It's not your talk show. You're going to be a substitute host, but you get to pick the guest.
Mm-hmm.
One time only. You get to pick a male, a female, a musical act, and a stand-up comedian if you're into stand-up comedy. These people can be alive or dead. They can be famous or not famous. They can be family, friends, people you've never met. They can be whoever you want them to be. And this question is meant to be a little more revealing about who you are and your taste.
Prince and Richard Pryor. Prince and Richard Pryor.
Okay, your musical act and okay.
Prince.
I love Richard Pryor. I think he's probably the funniest comedian that ever lived.
Yeah, some of the stuff he says, the true test is like and I know some of the council culture, you can't say some of the things, but he was just a genius. And all of it, people can laugh because it applied to them. They would think the same stuff. And if I have any sense of humor, definitely kind of that Richard Pryor type of sense of humor. And then Prince, I grew up on his songs. I grew up listening to his music, and so I've seen his interviews, and I don't know if I would have been a good person interviewing him, but I enjoyed his music probably at the time probably the most. I, I listen to old music now, so I don't know if there's anybody current or whatever that I would interview, but there's a lot of musical talent. I would interview myself. I've written a couple of songs. I would interview myself. I can't sing at all, can't play the instrument, but darn it, I could write a song.
Right on. You get 4 guest total, so the other 2 are just any man and then any woman.
Lester Holtz, news with NBC
Okay.
News. I run home. My wife will tell you. I run home. I break my neck in traffic to get home by 7 o'clock so I can listen to him on his news show. Because it's kind of like Walter Cronkite. I'm saying it wrong, but way back in the day, there was somebody that you just really enjoyed or that you trusted with news. And in this crazy world with all the news people, I trust him and his voice, and just it's like a comfort to me. So I would definitely try to interview him, and then I I I met Dr. J, and I was like a kid. I mean, I was so like a kid in the candy store. I shook his hand, and he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Man, you're Dr. J," and he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "You Dr. J," and he's like, "Hey, I gotta go," and I was like, "You Dr. J," and he's like, "Can you let go of my hand?" And I'm like, "No, man, you Dr. J." So I just freaked out, but it would be cool to just to say, man, I just wow, that would be it. The whole show would be, wow, you're Dr. J. He's like, "Can you ask me another question?"
Yeah, when you and I were growing up, he was probably the most famous athlete, regardless of sport.
Yeah, that or Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Ali was one of the first, I think, way back when, couldn't go any place in the world. He's one of the most recognized faces in the world. I mean, not just in America, in the world. And so, and he was so intelligent. I think people underestimate athletes a lot of times and just think that they're good at sports and that's all they're good at. And there's so many intelligent guys that when you start talking to them, you're like, wow, I didn't realize, you were that smart. Not as a degrading thing. It's just you didn't realize their intelligence went way beyond the average. It was just even more than the most average people or more intelligent people. It's like they're borderline geniuses. So
yeah, Muhammad was brilliant, and he's also has more personal courage than any person I've ever read about.
Right? I mean, the being like I always wanted to. I always thought about like during slavery time or during the protests in the 60s and 50s and stuff like that. And while the African Americans we were fighting and we're doing like that, but for how many, I gotta say it like this, I guess, white people that didn't get any recognition, didn't get any name, was banned from their family, but stood up because they believed what was right was right. And and you would never hear a book or you never see the history of that person, but they believed in what was right. This we're all humans and we're all treated the same way, and we should be treated that way. Man, that to me is courage, because now the whole world is saying no, you're supposed to be some way, and it's so easy to go along with the flow, and it's hard to just stand and say, you know what is right, and we can't do this, even in the face of judgment against your own people. So
yeah, that conviction that Muhammad had his entire life is just otherworldly.
Yeah, right. To be convicted enough to go to jail, to be convicted enough to be talked about, to be convicted enough to not give in to peer pressure, to go back to the way you were. It's to stand up for what you believe in, right or wrong, good or bad. That's pretty amazing. So he was good. There are a lot of people that you would love to say, oh, I love to interview you. I don't know if I would be the best interviewer. I'd just be sitting there with my mouth open like. So.
Yeah, I imagine Muhammad had that impact on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Hey, let's close real quickly. Just tell me about your family.
Yeah, so my wife I met in college, and I mentioned her a little bit in the book, but she's a major part of any success that I've had. She's been the support, been the rock. A lot of times having to deal with me, the side of me that most people don't get a chance to see, and that knucklehead and insecure and crying on her shoulders and all that stuff. She's been the rock, and she's with me. We've been married 33 years. She's an interior designer. I have two boys. Well, my oldest is Anthony. He works with Amazon now. He's an IT guy. He has a story on his own. Then my youngest is Marcus. Super smart. Went to William and Mary, got his master's, but been traveling the world on his motorcycle, and has been to pretty much every country on his motorcycle by himself. And he's living a dream and doing it himself. He works full time remotely. He's doing it himself, and he's doing what millions of people dream about doing. And I couldn't be any more proud of him. And so that's my family. We had our oldest son, Nathaniel. He passed away at 6 months from SIDS.
Sorry to hear that.
It's things happen, and for us, we believe he's in heaven. So that's it. That's my family, and my oldest Anthony's getting married next year. So this will be the first. I got to learn some dance moves, I guess.
Dance moves, and then wrap your head around being a grandfather, maybe.
I've been dealing with that, and I don't know. At one time, I thought I would have been a great grandfather, but I'm finding myself being more cranky, and I don't know anymore. Hopefully, I'll be a good grandfather. But the proudest moment to me would be if my boys would give their kids and say, "Hey, Grandpa did this book for us." That to me would be the dream, right? And I forced all my boys. All my boys have my same middle name, so we'll see if they pass it along to their kids.
I think they have to, right?
No pressure. You be who you are, but I keep throwing out the hints.
Well, Ken, hey, I really appreciate you doing this. You're a very good person to take the time to do this. Not everybody that has lived your life would take the time to do this, so I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. I mean, if one thing, like I say, we teach these little lessons, your tenacity, you kept at it, and I appreciate you. Some people get mad and get an attitude and want to talk bad about the person, and you just kept, hey, is this time good? And can we do it here? And so I appreciate you doing it and making this interview so easy. Not everybody's a great interviewer, so you made it really easy and simple. Thank you.
Awesome, Ken. Enjoy the rest of your night. I appreciate it.
Dinner of the universe.
Right on.
All right, buddy. Take care. Bye.
All right, see you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.